We do this by not only interviewing guests, but also sharing our perspectives and asking you, the listener, to interact with us on our show chat room via our Facebook page and on Twitter.
I was born here on a winter's day. Many people come from far away. We live in peace and true equality, and feel the strong wind of democracy. See a vision of the promised land, a place where everybody has a chance. A built home we are proud to know. Give respect to those who made it known. We strive to keep the dream alive. For you and I to realize. American dream. We speak our mind. Fighting.
All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of Stu and the Nunn. Check on some audio settings here. You got Stu here. We don't have Nunn tonight. He is still kicking it in the very southern studio in down in Cabo San Lucas, running Red Rum Sport Fishing, one of our main sponsors. But I do have Rob, the unpaid producer, with me tonight, earning his money, which is zero. Hey, Rob, how you doing?
I'm doing great, sir. And yourself?
Good, good. You and I both have a great face for radio. I'm just saying. So the people that aren't tuned in video they're probably enjoying this better than the ones that are watching us.
I would have to agree.
Yeah. Good to have you on. You're the third leg to our body of show here. I'm not gonna say which leg because that could be kind of weird. But you are our third leg. You're a key part of our team. You make just as much as the rest of us, so zero. But we do this to bring great stories, obviously, and do great things. You were representing the not quite as southern as used to be or Toby is, but you are more southern than me here in Western New York. So how's it going down there?
I think most of the United States is southern compared to you. You're almost Canada.
You are
you
about 10 minutes from there. Yes.
See it.
Yeah. I can see Canada out probably from my rooftop. I can, for sure. But
it's probably a little warmer here than it is where you're at. It's a nice 91 degrees still at 7 in the evening.
Yeah. So my company's out of Austin. Every time they ask me, when are you moving to Austin? I just go traffic and weather. You guys are cool with that, then down there, because they're not. But yeah. And we got joined with us our great guest tonight, who is also even more southern than you. Kawa, I'm not going to say your last name. I don't want to butcher it. We didn't check that. But Kawa, welcome to the show. Welcome to Stu and the Nunn, and glad to have you on, brother.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. It's good to be here. And yeah, I get my name butchered all the time. It's okay. It's been happening all my life.
Can I make a run at it?
Pronounced.
Can I make a run at it?
Yeah, take a shot.
Mawlayee. Mawlayee? I'm trying to do it phonetically.
Close.
Okay.
Yeah, Mawlayee. Yeah. Mawlayee is pretty close. Yeah, okay. That's good.
See, and Kawa you can tell he's a podcaster on a goddamn show. Look at that microphone. That thing is, I've got microphone envy. Mine looks so small compared to that.
I think that's just the foam, so I don't spit on it and stuff.
There we go. There we go. Well, hey, welcome to the show. Glad to have you on. You've got a great story that we want to share with a lot of folks tonight. And you're joining us also from the Republic of Texas.
Yes, sir.
You guys are. I'm in a socialist.
I want to say Houston, but technically I'm not Houston. I'm just outside of Houston. So not that anybody's gonna know where this town is, but we'll just keep it Houston, I guess.
We'll keep it Houston. There we go. But
yeah,
awesome.
Houston has that gravity about it. Everything within 80 to 100 miles outside of Houston is considered Houston.
Still Houston. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't want any.
Kind of like LA.
Yeah, we don't want anyone like fans stalking you or anything and trying to hunt you down because
yeah,
they may learn what Mozambique style is real quick with right two to the chest, one to the head. So want to turn anything on. But hey, thank you so much for welcoming. Yeah, you have a very interesting background. We're going to get into that. Obviously, the biggest thing, or probably the unique thing about you, first and only Afghan American Green Beret in Special Forces history. Obviously, when we say that, people are going, "What do you mean by Afghan American?" did not recruit him. I didn't recruit Kawa when I was over in Afghanistan and be like, dude, come on, signing you up. You came over to the United States a long time ago and 100% American in this country. But can you give us, our viewers and listeners, a little bit of a kind of a history of when you were born, what you did, how you got here, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. And just to kind of go back to that, I don't think I'm the only Afghan Green Beret anymore. I mean, I might be wrong. But at the time that we sent that inquiry up to the Pentagon, and by the time it came back, they said that I was the only Afghan Green Beret that they had in their archives for their personnel records. And I don't know if I can say I'm the only one anymore. I'm sure there might be one or two out there, maybe more. Who knows? I know I got a younger cousin that's in the Army who's going to selection in the fall. So yeah, it was shocking to me as well. And I was like, wow, that's kind of a cool stat. I'll own it. Thank you. But going back to my origins, I was born in Kabul. That's where my family's from. They've lived there for as long as I remember, or as long as they recall, I guess. And our lineage traces back to Kabul. I was born there in '78, kind of at the height of the Russian invasion. I know the Russians kind of invaded technically in '79, but I mean, they had their hooks into Afghanistan way before that with politicians and the Communist Party and all that. But yeah, it was '78 is when I was born. An interesting fact, a lot of people know this already, but for your audience, 9/11 is my birthday. So
wow.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I was born there. My sister was born there too. She's my only sibling. And then in '81, we moved. I think in '79 is when the Russians actually reached Kabul, or at least the outer skirts of Kabul. And that was when my family, kind of made a decision that we're leaving. But even then, that was going to be a slow process for us to transition out. There wasn't like Russians in the streets or anything. But when my father was killed, because my father and my grandfather were both Afghan military, and they actually both went AWOL from the military to fight the Russians. But when my father was killed by the Russians, that was kind of like what expedited our process. And we left Afghanistan. My grandfather made 4 or 5 trips with his kids and grandkids to Pakistan, where I think we waited for, I forget, like 6 to 8 months while the paperwork for the U.S. was being approved and all that stuff. So we spent some time in Pakistan and then finally came to the States. We chose Nebraska because my oldest uncle was already a foreign exchange student at the University of Creighton in Omaha. And so when we moved to Nebraska, we settled in Lincoln. And I grew up in Lincoln, went to high school there. I'm a big Husker fan, go Big Red. And went to college there, and after college, joined the Marine Corps. But that was, that was the kind of the origin story. Obviously, it's a lot more detailed. I will add this story. The trip that my grandfather made with my mom, myself, and my sister was a scary one, according to my mom, where he was pulled off the bus by Mujahideen soldiers or freedom fighters at one point. And he was put on his knees outside of the bus on the ground with an AK to his head. And the reason they did that was because my grandfather was a banker and he was always in a 3-piece suit, like nice, clean shaved. And, having a clean shaved beard back then was not something that was normal. And so the people that were clean shaven were most of the Communist Party. And so they accused him of being a communist, and he had to prove that he was a banker, why he dressed like that, but it was those kind of little things that made that whole transition to Pakistan pretty scary. On top of that, I have 2 younger uncles that he hid in rice crates in the back of the bus with rice bags over their heads so that they weren't detained by the Afghan military because they hadn't served their mandatory military time yet. But also he didn't want Mujahideen to kind of pull his 2 boys off the bus and recruit them as fighters. So a lot of little dangers that kind of made for an interesting story of how we got out of Afghanistan. That was 1981. We came to the U.S.
So you were just a couple years old, obviously, just a few years old.
I was 3. My sister was a newborn.
Do you remember any of the trip? Is there any snippets of it that for this scene or this?
I have one memory of Afghanistan, and that is my uncle putting me on the front of his motorcycle, not on the front, but on the front portion of the seat of his motorcycle and taking me for like little joyrides and stuff around the neighborhood. But that's my only memory of Afghanistan.
Well, between the pulling people out of the bus, putting AKs to their head, motorcycles, change much those aspects. I mean, that's still. I mean, at least it was when I was there.
Yeah, Afghanistan. Yeah, Afghanistan has an interesting story. Obviously, the history of Afghanistan is amazing with all the different armies that came in there and the different influences. But that's the history of Afghanistan. Afghanistan has always been at war. They're a very tribal country. If they're not fighting a foreign entity, they're fighting themselves for territory and power and influence. So it's a way of life, really. So regardless of what you throw at Afghans, the Mujahideen, the Russians, the British, the Americans, it doesn't matter. These people have learned how to adapt and survive to those conditions long before we got there. As for them, it's just another day, which is incredible. They are definitely very hard people.
So growing up the way you did, and obviously you were little, but learning these things was part of that. What led you to join the military, and what made you choose the Marine Corps?
So from a very early age, I started to understand and appreciate our living, like our quality of life. Hearing the stories that my parent or my mom, my uncles, my grandfather, my aunts, like the stories that they would tell of Afghanistan, and then comparing their stories to our quality of life and our living conditions here in Nebraska, Lincoln at the time, was night and day difference. And it made me, as I got older and I started hearing these stories, but as I got older and more mature and kind of understood, the culture here in America, I had like this overwhelming sense of gratitude for this country. I had this overwhelming sense of appreciation for how we came here. I mean, we came here the right way, but that wasn't the hard part. The hard part was kind of for everyone adjusting to this new lifestyle. For me and my sister, it was just, we were young, so we were like sponges, just kind of soaking up everything. But I could see how hard it was for the adults in my family and how they were struggling with the language, the culture barrier, the religion, everything. And so for me, going to school and meeting friends, who were white, black, Hispanic, Asian, it didn't matter. For us, it was like, wow, this is cool, And so growing up, I mean, our quality of life here was amazing. My sister and I loved, everything that we had going on in our lives. But when I got into my teenage years, there was there was this overwhelming sense of gratitude where I felt like I needed to do something to repay back the country that took us with open arms, and because I imagine how I would have grown up in Afghanistan, right? If I I'm 43 years old. If I spent, all this time in Afghanistan growing up, would I be Taliban? Would I be Mujahideen? Would I be in the military? Who would I be?
Would you be alive?
Yeah, would I be alive? Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. And so I didn't have to worry about any of that here, right? And so I wanted to pay back the country that took us in, and I didn't know how to do that other than join the military, which is kind of in my blood because my entire dad's side was military. On my mom's side, there was people that were in the military. So, and I just had this, just like any other kid when they're growing up, I played with guns, I played with GI Joes, and like the military was on the front of the forefront of my mind. I wanted to join the military out of high school. But my mom was like, I will disown you if you join the military out of high school. All she wanted me to do was go to college, graduate, and then she said, you do whatever you want with that after that. But that was it for me. I knew that the one way I could repay back this country was to join the military, and just whether that was 3 years, 4 years in the Marine Corps, it didn't really matter to me, but I wanted to do something. So that's what I did. I joined the Marine Corps, and as I was going through high school, I did research on what branch I wanted to join. It was either going to be the Army or the Marine Corps, and because I knew I wanted to be an infantryman. So I walked into the recruiter's office after I graduated college, and I said, hey, I want to join the military. I want to join the Marine Corps, and I want to be an infantryman. So, and then that was that, you know. But why did I pick infantry? Who knows? Maybe that's kind of like some of the Afghan genes in me, you know, since we're kind of like a war fighter kind of nation, you know. But
I
that
think
wasn't a hard
every young
decision.
man wants to join the infantry. I mean, it's just, you know, nobody runs around playing army and says, "I'll be the cook." You know, no one says,
Yeah,
you know, "I'm going to be the truck driver." It's
exactly.
all about.
And the recruiter tried to talk me out of it because I took the ASVAB. I took these
Oh yeah, he just
tests, and they're
graduated from
like,
college. He's probably like,
yeah, they're like, hey man, like you should go ROTC. And I did ROTC for 1 semester, and I was like, this is dumb. I'm not doing ROTC. Like, why would I be an officer? That's dumb, you know. And then so, I mean, when I went into the Marine Corps and I did those tests, they were like, dude, your ASVAB is pretty high. You should go intel. You should do this. And I was like, no. I was like, either give me 0311 or I'm walking across the hall to the Army side, you know. So, but it was really that easy of a choice. But that was it. That was my basis. My basis was to show appreciation and gratitude to the country that took my family in, because we're a large family. I got 6 uncles. I got 4 aunts. That's just on my mom's side, you know, and all their kids. We're a large family, and so I wanted to not just show appreciation for myself, but appreciation for my family, you know, and maybe they couldn't have. But that was the foundation.
so I want to.
And then you did how many years in the Marine Corps?
I did 5 years in the Marine Corps.
And then you transitioned over to Special Forces. How that?
I did after after my third deployment in the Marines. My final deployment in the Marine Corps was Fallujah, Operation Phantom Fury, where I was a squad leader, and that was that big battle of Fallujah with Zarqawi and all that. And once we got done with that, I realized that there's no like growth progress from here. Obviously, I can rank up and all that, but I wanted to do something bigger and better. And our relationship with the Navy SEALs were pretty close, and I looked up to those guys and I worked with them. For example, I mean, Chris Kyle's team was with us in in Iraq in Fallujah, and interacting with those guys was amazing. But when I really did my homework on where I want to go and which branch would present me with the most opportunities, it was the Army. And I loved the Special Forces history. I love their heritage. I love their mission sets, their scope of work. And that's why I decided to go into the Army and try out for Special Forces.
Okay. I want to roll it back a little bit. You mentioned a while back, father made. Said you had to assume it was. He risked it. Sounds like he risked it every time.
He
And do it
did.
every way he could.
Yeah, he did. He did. So we kind of used our our connections on the military side to kind of get us through some of those military checkpoints, and a little bit of money that we had, we kind of used that to pay off the Mujahideen checkpoints. And he knew that he couldn't get all his kids and some of his grandkids out in one trip or even 2 trips. So he made multiple trips, risking himself, to those dangers every time he came back to Afghanistan. But he got us all out, you know. And I mean, and he passed away in 2010. But I mean, I didn't grow up with a father, but he was my dad. Like he did everything, like that a dad would do and more. And I'm proud of that man for what he did and what he given us, But yeah, it was crazy times from, and all these stories, obviously I'm hearing from my uncles and aunts and of the dangers. The Mujahideen, people think that they were just freedom fighters and they were kind of the good guys, but honestly, they weren't. They were nothing other than just tribal Afghans, And of course, they joined together to fight the Russians, but at the end of it, they were still the soldiers of warlords in those territories, So if it wasn't the Russians, they'd be fighting each other. So these guys were just as dangerous as the Russians, and they were just as dangerous as the communist kind of faction of the Afghan military.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it is. You mentioned it, right? It is very tribal. It said to people, when they're like, I can't believe they're fighting the Pakis. No, they're fighting another tribe that happens to be over there. There just happens to be some border drop. They really don't know about that. They don't care. It's another family or tribe that they've been warring with. And I've told people this before, right? This country's been at war longer than we've been in the country. Like they've got this mastered. If they weren't fighting the Russians, they'd be fighting something.
Yeah.
And So, do you speak Pashto and Dari and all that? Were you raised speaking?
So my family are Dari speakers. I think some of my uncles know a little bit of Pashto. I never grew up learning Pashto. Pashto and Dari are just so different.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
there are some of the vocabulary is the same, but it's just a different language. I tried to learn a little bit in my time at fifth group when I first got to the Special Forces group, but I was at that point. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to stick to Dari. The only reason I knew Dari is because my mom was very strict when I was little, and when my sister and I would get home from school, she would say, "No more English." She's like, "You get enough English at school. You get enough English on the TV. When you're in the house, you speak Dari," and that was it. Like there was no buts there. And then when we got older, she tried to teach us how to read and write it, and I wasn't very good at reading it, but I got pretty decent at writing it. And that kind of carried over. But because she did that, my time in the Special Forces qualification course was shortened because I didn't have to do the 3 months of language like everybody else.
Yeah, I was imagining that was a benefit.
Yeah, I did 3 weeks. Although when I got to the language phase of the Q course, I asked for Arabic because I always wanted to go to fifth group, and fifth group has the Middle East as their AO, their area of responsibility.
Right.
But I wanted to learn Arabic. I was like, I already know Dari, teach me Arabic. They're like, no, you already know Dari, so you're sticking to Dari. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. But I'm just an E5 in the Q course, so like, I got it. So, but yeah, so thank you to her. And I've told her this plenty of times. Is like, thank you for being so strict when I was little, because that really helped me out, not just with the Q course and becoming a Green Beret, but all the deployments to Afghanistan and connecting with those people, speaking Dari to them, and just building that instant rapport and seeing how much harder they work for us now that there's an Afghan on the team who speaks their language. It's just night and day difference.
Well, those that speak multiple languages just have a different view of the world, right? You can associate with even those who don't speak the same languages because you understand at least two different worlds because you speak two different languages like that.
Yeah, and the culture is
huge
big.
advantages.
Exactly. And even if you understand the culture, right? Because like Green Berets are required to be proficient in one foreign language. That foreign language, they can choose that, or it gets determined by the group that they go to, right? But when you go to fifth group, you're more than likely learning either Afghan Dari or Pashto, or you're learning Arabic. And we have to maintain a certain proficiency level at that because we get tested all the time. But even not just learning the language, learning the culture. A lot of fifth group guys are white. We have some Hispanic guys, we have some Asian guys, we have some Black guys, but the majority of fifth group are white. And trying to teach these guys the culture of Afghanistan, it was tough. It was tough. I mean, just for the guys on my team, it was tough. But once they understood it and they applied it in country with the people, you could see how much of a difference it makes versus the one guy that didn't apply himself. But that carried all over the Middle East because even though Afghanistan is not in the Middle East, the culture is still very much the same. Yeah. And so you can apply that cultural understanding to UAE, to Lebanon, to Jordan, to Afghanistan, and like everyone's like, oh wow, he gets us, right? And so just kind of the rapport is expedited, and that relationship building is expedited by that.
I was going to ask, did you notice, was it helpful when you were in Iraq with the Marines? When you're in the Marines?
Yes.
Did they just notice a difference about you there? The Iraqis could just tell you carried yourself different, looked different. Somewhat helpful there to a point.
Yeah, they would ask me. They're like, "Where are you from?" They're like, and I would mess around with them at first. I'm like, "I'm Mexican." They're like, "No, you're not Mexican." They're like, "Where are you?" And I was like, "All right, I'm Afghan." And once I said I'm Afghan, it's like, like their eyes popped out. They're like,
almost
"Holy
like
shit,"
you were in a circle of trust, like you were just.
Yeah, it's and then actually during my second deployment to Iraq, I met an Afghan in Baghdad. And I actually used him. I recruited him because we didn't have an interpreter back then. And so I recruited him. I was like, "Hey man, like speak Arabic." And I was saying this all in Dari. He's like, "Yeah, I speak Arabic." I was like, "Can you please translate for me and tell this crowd to back off?" Because they're starting to, you remember like OIF days, right? OIF 1, OIF 2. The crowds were always kind of overwhelm you and
Right.
stuff. But so yeah, I met one Afghan there who I used as a translator, and I was like, please, and he helped us out, and the crowd listened, But it really is kind of, when foreigners interact with Americans and they see that these guys have taken the time to understand the culture, maybe some of the language, maybe even some of the history, it really is like such a instantaneous kind of bonding between those two people, because they're appreciative that
Yeah, it's a sign of
because
respect.
Americans,
It's a sign of
yeah,
respect.
because it's like the whole ugly American thing, right?
Right.
Like wherever we go in the world, they're like, oh, ugly Americans and this and that. Well, it's not necessarily true with the military, especially in special forces.
Yeah. So I was in Afghanistan 06 as an ETT. Same thing. We went through a quick indoctrination kind of stuff as we got ready, but just what little I picked up, even though we had interpreters, I had Terps assigned to us and everything, in man ETT, even taking a little bit to speak a few words, even though my Terps taught me all the bad words, and of course they already knew them. Even just me taking that, sitting down and eating with them and doing things like that, it's just a straight white American dude, got instant respect with it, and
Right.
it built a big rapport. So I can't imagine once you got over there, being born in Afghanistan originally, speaking Dari. Obviously, they could probably see it in you. Hey, this guy looks like sure and face and all that stuff. That they just you had to be a combat multiplier for your team.
The protocol was that whenever we linked up with our partner forces or our host nation forces, was I wouldn't tell anybody who I am or what I am for the first 30 days. Because at that point, as we were working with these guys, I would just listen in on conversations.
Yeah.
I was looking for those red flags, I was looking for those threat indicators of possibly these guys maybe planning something against us or even speaking badly about us. But I gotta say, deployments that I had in Afghanistan, not once did I hear either our our Afghan army guys or Afghan police guys saying anything bad about us. And so after those 30 days, when I was kind of done with that vetting process, then I kind of, I let the cat out of the bag, and everybody was just like, their jaws would just hit the ground, like, oh my God, right? And the million questions would follow. Like, what is it like being an Afghan in America? And, just a million questions, right?
Yeah.
But it was all positive. It was all positive.
So did you, like many guys I know in SF at different groups, did you rotate in and out of the same general AO? I don't know how many deployments you had in SF over there, but were you rolling in and out to know and build rapport with the same local national?
In Afghanistan, I want to say that three out of all the deployments that we had there were in the same AO. Two of them were in the same fire base, and so we came right back to that fire base that we were at. And I picked up everything with the local sources that I knew, with the numbers that I had. I picked right back up with those guys, letting them know, hey, I'm back here, back at, Firebase Davis. And
I was gonna say, where were you at over there? Where were you? Biktika, down in OE?
We were in Kalat. So we were in Kalat on, and then Paktika, near the border. And then we were up in Helmand. Okay,
you were in Helmand, yeah. So did you know? Did you cross paths with Rusty Bradley over there, Scott Mann, any of those guys over there? Rusty was in and out repeatedly down in Helmand. He's a friend of the show. He wrote the book The Lions of Kandahar, and then Scott Mann did a number of tours.
I feel like I know Scott Mann. I'm terrible with names. I'm better with faces, but I feel like Scott is. I feel like I've met him and we've talked once.
He was on this whole recent the Pineapple Express, the whole thing with the Afghan. He was part of that founding group. He wrote the play, movie for Stout, Green Beret. So he's really especially with the collapse of Kabul and but I would
save our allies.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So okay,
a lot of people who, because people know special forces is pretty small. The regiment is pretty small.
Right.
But even inside the regiment, like in fifth group, they're like, hey, you know this fifth group guy? I'm like, it doesn't ring a bell. They're like, what do you mean? He's right there in fifth group. I'm like, you know how many people are in fifth group? It's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
5,000. There's 5,000 people in fifth group. About 15 to 1,700 of those are Green Berets, and the rest are all support.
Right.
But even then, like we don't all know each other, you know.
Yeah.
So we're a small community. It's crazy because I know more people outside of the SF community that are prior SF than I do the guys that are still in. It's kind of weird. I mean, I have buddies in most of all the groups, but most of my SF buddies are all out at this point.
Think your background and language skills are what targeted you right to? Imagine so. They wouldn't be like, oh, put this guy in first. We'll teach him Japanese.
Yeah, I asked for fifth group from the get-go because, like I said, I did my homework on all the groups, and I was like, well, why would I want to go to seventh group? They go to Central South America. You know, why would I go to the 10th group? They're in Europe. So fifth group just made sense to me. Third group was kind of my backup, but fifth group was definitely my primary, and it just made sense. And nobody fought me on that. Nobody really fought me on anything I asked for. I asked for fifth group. I asked for Arabic. Well, I lost that battle. But then I also asked to be a weapons sergeant, and I was an 18 Bravo when I first came in, and then I progressed to an 18 Fox before I left. But yeah, I always wanted to go to fifth group, and a lot of everybody in the Q course knew I was Afghan. So if I had said, hey, I want to go to this group, they were like, no.
Yeah,
no,
you would have lost that
group.
one like you lost Arabic. You know.
Like fifth group, when I first showed up to fifth group, and you do your interview with the command sergeant major. I mean, he had my whole profile. Like he was like, so you went to Fallujah and you were this and that, and then and I was like, yep. And he was like, okay, good, you know. And so from the time I got to fifth group, they pushed me down the intel route. I mean, I did get some really cool schools that I wanted to go to, but the schools that they had pushed me to were all intel, human, you know, sources, contacts. I mean, which was cool because a lot of those schools got me some really cool missions later on with interagency taskings or some task force. Yeah.
Did you lateral transfer, or did you have to get out of the Marine Corps and then come back in as the Army?
No, if I had gone to the Navy, that would have been a lateral transfer. That was easy. But because I was leaving the Marine Corps for the Army, and in fact, when I left the Marine Corps, I wasn't quite sure where I wanted to go. When I left the Marine Corps, I just knew that I wanted to do something kind of bigger and better. Now, when I left the Marine Corps, I did submit an application to Blackwater at the time, and we're talking about early 2005. You know, I submitted an application to Blackwater. Blackwater accepted me after a lengthy interview process, and they sent me an offer letter to go to Iraq for a year, like 3 on 1 off, for a lot of money at the time. But you know, again, doing more homework, I said if I'm gonna go do this kind of dangerous job, I would really love to have some support if the shit is the fan, you know. And Blackwater just didn't have that kind of support back then. But also, again, I've always been a military guy, and I couldn't see myself as a contractor, at least not those kind of contractors where I'm doing PSDs and stuff. So, yeah, at that point, I was like, hey, I told everybody, hey, I'm going into the Army. I'm trying out for Special Forces, you know, and that's the goal.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in those deployments back and forth over there, was there ever a time did you ever find there any connection or go find that?
Yeah, so good question, because I would have forgot. My second time to Afghanistan, I was able to see my dad's brother, my uncle on my dad's side. The only reason I was able to see him was this particular uncle was very famous when he was younger at playing soccer, playing Afghan football. And when he got older, he became the national coach or the national manager of the Afghanistan soccer team. So he became the national manager, and he went back to Afghanistan because all my family's been out of Afghanistan for years. Most of my mom's side is here in the U.S., and then most of my dad's side is either in Holland or Germany or the UK. But he went back because he got that job, and just luckily, you know, we stayed in contact, and he came out to, I think I was at Kandahar. I was a calf. I think, in fact, we were on the way out, and that was the only reason we could make it happen. But he had a buddy that worked for the civilian side of the airport, and then he introduced him to the Army liaison, and then we just kind of made that connection. He came, and that was the first time I've seen him, and that was the first time he's seen me since we left. You know, so we got to meet, and that was great. And then one of the other trips to Afghanistan, I had told one of the company commander at the time that, hey, my dad's burial place is it's in a cemetery in Kabul, and his wife was a squadron commander, flying Blackhawks, and so she ran up her chain of command, and they're like, so what they proposed was, we're gonna take a couple Blackhawks, go to Kabul, go to Bagram, link up with some Rangers, and then the Rangers would escort us to the cemetery. Which I was like, whoa,
Wow.
like
That's
I didn't ask for all that, guys. I didn't ask for all that.
they just
like,
planned a whole con op around.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't ask for all that. All I said was that his cemetery, his burial spot, is in a cemetery behind the University of Kabul, and it'd be nice to go see that if we can make it some kind of trip. Maybe on the back end of this trip. Before I know it, there's like a con-op being planned, and like I'm being briefed. There's an air mission brief. And like they're like, we're gonna take 2 Blackhawks and we're gonna go link up with the Rangers, and then we're gonna convoy to the thing. And I was like, what? No. So I turned that down. I was like, there's no way that we're gonna, use 2 Blackhawks who some other unit could use, and then go occupy a Ranger platoon, to come. So I turned it down. And I was like, this is turning into this major ordeal now at this point. But I was very appreciative and grateful for my chain of command kind of making that happen for me, So
did you just throw on some man jammies and jump in a Corolla and run down there and check it out?
If we were closer to Kabul, I would have definitely done that.
But so you never got to go there, huh? You never got to see it?
Never got to go there, yeah. That's okay, but one day I will.
So from the chat, Doug was asking, through whether Save Our Allies or others, do you still have contacts, and were any of your contacts able to make it out?
So when that whole thing was going down, I can't take credit for people getting out, but I can take credit for linking people up with the right people to get out. So that's what I did. All the contacts that I had, including some extended family, which I didn't even know were there. And when I say extended, I mean like by marriage and stuff, not by blood. But I was able to link them up with certain kind of POCs with different organizations, and then they were able to get them out. So that's as much credit as I'll take. But yeah, so which I'm grateful for, by the way, that everybody that I knew was able to get out at some point.
Any family or friend connections, or just from your intel training, are you hearing anything happening on the ground?
Yeah, it's been tough. Well, all the sources that I had for info are out now. They're safe,
Yeah.
So I have no sources left there. So I hear the same thing you guys hear, and I don't go out of my way to ask people. I do have some buddies in 3-letter agencies that go there, but I don't bother them with that kind of stuff.
So you were in 5th Group, and then it looks like you at some point you got out of active and went into the National Guard. How'd that happen? Why'd that happen?
So, I left 5th Group because I was having a tough time with our marriage. In all honesty, being a special forces soldier, between deployments, schools that you go to, team training concepts, you're hardly home. You're home maybe, anywhere from 4 months in the year to 2 months out of the year. And that's not really even like a straight stint. Sometimes you're home for a couple weeks at a time before you go on to some school. And so what that does really is it tests your marriage. It tests, your communication. It tests a lot of things when it comes to marriage, and it takes a toll at the same time. And I'll admit, this isn't the first time I've admitted this, but I was really bad at communicating with my ex-wife back then. And so kind of drove us apart. But also on a daily basis, I would come home and I wouldn't know how to turn off that switch from 18 Bravo to husband. I was always kind of in work mode, and that really kind of drove a divider in our marriage. And at some point she got tired of it and she left. And when she left, is when I decided that I need to go try to make this work. So I knew I couldn't do that and stay active duty at the same time. Luckily, I was in a place where leaving was easy. I was teaching at Suffolk. I was an instructor there, and so leaving from the committee was a lot easier than trying to leave from a team. But that was the decision I made, was to leave active duty, after all those years. But I still wanted to keep one foot in the door, so I inquired with 19th Group. I was like, I don't know anything about the National Guard, but I'm willing to learn. And 19th Group, 19th Group Alpha Company in LA took me with open arms, and when I got there, it was nothing but praise from the chain of command, because they appreciated my active duty time, my experience, and all that. And but they also, I told them, I was like, I'm not here to deploy with you guys. I'm not here to go to schools. Like, I'm here to kind of ride out to retirement, But I'm happy to kind of do a trainer program. Since I came from Suffolk, I can put on ranges, I can teach CQB, I can do all that. Use me in that. And I rode that out as long as I could, until I got to a point where they said, you got to take this promotion or you got to get out. And so they wanted to promote me to master sergeant and give me a team, and I turned that down 3 times. And then finally they were like, and then that's when COVID happened. So COVID happened, and we were all kind of dealing with COVID at a unit level. But then when the mandates came down, that's when they were like, Kawa, you got to get the shot. I said, I'm not taking the shot. And that's still kind of pending, but I got counseled 3 times. They at the unit level, they're trying to help me out. Like, right. 19th Group is at the unit level, they're good guys. I don't have anything against them. Obviously this is all top driven, right? So
right. Literally from the top.
Yeah, literally from the top. So everyone's in self-preservation mode. I get it. To go against the grain would be career suicide, because like in the military, you're very easy to replace, right? So I get that nobody was fighting this at any level, really. But when they told me, and like what I mean by helping me out was, they were like, well, let's just do a medical exemption. Let's just do a religious exemption. And I said no to both. And they're like, so you're just saying no? And I said, I'm saying no. And I went through this whole process of interviews. They wanted to know why I was saying no. They made me watch like a little COVID video. I talked to the to the chaplain. I checked all those boxes. At the end of the day, I said, I'm not taking this. They try to guilt trip me into it. They try to say, well, you took anthrax, you took MMR, and I was like, look, but those vaccines have good track records.
Right.
I don't see teenagers dying. I don't see old people getting sick. I don't see these things that are happening. And so I just put my foot down, and they were like, well, you're either going to take it or we're going to kick you out. And I said, then kick me out, guys. So plus at that point I had so much going on the outside.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was that. And honestly, that's still pending.
So are you out yet or still in possible?
No, I'm still in technically, and I'm just kind of.
I'm assuming you're just shy of 20, or.
Yeah, technically I'm at 21 years.
Okay.
But I got to give 19th Group 2 more good years if I want it to count.
Right. Yeah, I figured that's why they were counseling you, doing this, and I'm sure they threw the guilt of, come on, you're throwing it all away. You did all this.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, 5th Group did the same thing to me.
Yeah.
The Group Sergeant Major is like, are you really throwing away your entire career for this? And I was like, Sergeant Major, like it's not like it's a girlfriend. I was like, we've been married forever. We have 4 kids together. Like,
yeah,
I gotta, but the Sergeant Major, the Group Sergeant Major at the time was a really good Sergeant Major to have. He even wrote me a letter. He said, look, I'm gonna write you this letter that says, even 5 years down the road, if you want to come back to 5th Group, you fucking show the CSM this letter, tell them to call me, and you have a place here. And I thanked them for that. And I still have that letter because it hasn't quite been 5 years. But
you could always finish out those last couple right there, maybe.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because now I've built such a post-military life for myself that keeps me so busy. It would be almost counterproductive to go back.
Yeah. So let's talk about that 2 Alpha training group, kind of how that came about. What was there's a lot of our good friend Tim Kennedy runs his Sheepdog Response. We know a lot of folks that run different training programs, different disciplines in the military. But what was the need you saw? Was it in film advisement and TV advisement? How do I do this? How do I best prepare? I mean, obviously, it's been something that's probably taken on more of a role in the last couple of years with the pandemic and COVID. But how did this come about? Why are you on this path?
Well, so we have, like, people have to understand that when I left fifth group, social media was not what it is today. Instagram was only a couple years old. There wasn't a lot of people who were shooting on Instagram, let alone instructing. There wasn't a lot of that stuff even on YouTube, really. And when you're like a career military guy, you kind of lose touch with the civilian side of things, right? You don't know if civilian trainers, you don't know if there's schools that people go to. Like, where do civilians go to learn, weapons proficiency and marksmanship and all that stuff and tactics? Where do civilians go for that? And so leaving Cephalic and leaving fifth group as a Green Beret, for me, it really came down to a simple thing. How can I take all my skill sets that I've learned in the military and in special forces and apply them to the civilian world? And I loved when I was an instructor at Cephalic, I loved it. I woke up every morning like loving that job. Even though it was long hours and we didn't get a lot of weekends off, I still loved it. And so I decided that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to, on the civilian side, start instructing people. And I feel like, when you're teaching at Cephalic, you're teaching at like the second highest tiered shooting school in special operations, the first one being at Bragg, right? So I knew that the curriculum that I had was very high level curriculum, very high level standards and execution. And so I took that and I kind of made a civilian version of that. And I started kind of teaching on the side, just little by little, and it kind of, obviously it grew. Word of mouth was great, but it grew. Posting on social media, Instagram at the time was great. And that was really it. It wasn't like this big thing of like what's missing or where's the gap that I can fill in this industry. It was really just me hanging on to my skill sets the best way I knew how. And that was through continuing to instruct, but in this case, civilians and possibly law enforcement down the road. And so that's what I did. And it was just me for the first 3 years teaching. And I traveled all over the country and I started teaching civilians. I started teaching law enforcement agencies, FBI. I even went to France for 3 weeks as a liaison and taught there. And that was supposed to be a green suitor gig, but I went there as a civilian. The Army was trying to pay me as an E7. And I was like, I'm not in the Army anymore, guys. Like, you're not going to give me an E7 pay. You're going to pay me contractor pay to go teach these guys. So I did.
They're trying to get off cheap. They were trying to get off real cheap.
Yeah. They're trying to pay me as an E7. And I was like, because they knew I was 19th. They were like, oh, we're going to pay you. I was like, no, that's not. I'm not doing that. But all that was great. And like, I love teaching. If I could teach for the rest of my life, I would, because at this point, what it's evolved to is building a stronger community, building a more educated and knowledgeable community so that we stay safer and we pass that education down to the people who want to learn this skill set, but also to the young ones that are the next generation shooters and patriots. And that's what it means to me. And so if I can teach for the rest of my life and just strengthen our community, I would be completely happy with that. Because as you guys know, we're under the microscope and we've been under the microscope for a long time. And every time something happens, they just want to gun grab and they paint us as the bad guys. So I think, that's my way of fighting the good fight, even though I'm out of the military.
So you started this company when you were in LA, you said? Out of California?
Yeah.
And then business wise, that moved you to Houston or outside of Houston?
So I started the company in LA, and then shortly after that, I started the Musa store, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with. So I started the Musa store, and I'm still an owner of the Musa store. I just don't do a lot of the day-to-day stuff with them anymore. So the Musa store is in Florida, and I moved to Florida for a little bit to kind of help them get settled and get up and going there. But then once that was going, I was like, guys, I'm not staying here. I had this media production company on the back of my mind for as long as I had 2 Alpha Training Group. I wanted to start this media production company. And so I knew that if I wanted to do that, I'd have to come to Houston, where I have good buddies that are amazing videographers and editors and stuff like that, and producers. And that's what got me from LA to Florida was Musa, and then from Florida here was starting that production company. 2 Alpha Training Group is the mobile training team. I can, do that from anywhere.
Well, Texas is definitely an upgrade from California, but
Texas.
Houston. I'm from Houston. Don't recommend it.
The only reason, other than the business side of things, I have some family here. The uncles I was telling you about earlier, 2 of them are here. My oldest that I was telling you, who's a foreign exchange student, he has been teaching at the University of Rice as a professor for, I don't know, 20 years, so he's been a professor there. My uncle is in charge of Tim Hortons, because Tim Hortons coffee is now migrating to the U.S.
Tim Hortons is in Texas?
Tim Hortons is coming to Texas. Yes, sir.
I'm in Buffalo, man. It's all around me here. It's just, I didn't know it went any farther than Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, so Tim Hortons is making a big push, and my uncle got that. He got that job. He's been with that company, the big investor group that owns all those companies, but they had reassigned him to Tim Hortons, and I think he was in Missouri for the last month doing that. But anyway, I have family here, and so it's kind of multi-purpose why I came here. On top of that, my mom is moving here. I got my ex and my kids moving here. A lot of my friends are moving here, not necessarily Houston, but even Dallas, San Antonio. They're just all the people that we want here are coming here.
There's a lot of people moving to the free Republic of Texas. That's for damn sure.
They're like-minded folks. Yeah,
that's right.
As long as they're like-minded.
Yeah. Yeah, they keep that California mindset in California. They're not welcome.
Yeah, keep it there, man. Keep it there. Nobody wants it.
We call Tim Hortons liquid crack here, because it's don't even talk to me about Dunkin' Donuts or any of that. It's all about the Timmy Hose.
My first experience with Tim Horton was in Afghanistan. It was at CAF.
At CAF, yeah, because they had one at CAF. The Canadians brought it over.
Yeah, I had it there, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is amazing!" This is a way.
Did they teach you how to play hockey on the rink they had there too? Did they teach you?
No, they were repurposing that field when we were there that second time. They were repurposing it. They're building like a big soccer field or something. I don't know, a soccer pitch.
So you've got 2 Alpha Training, like you said, it's a mobile. You've got the media group. I thought that was more film, TV, consulting, but that is media production. How did you get it? How's the spin? I could get the advisement on military topics with film, movies, get the training group, but where did the knack production?
I've always been, even since I was little, I've always been a creative. I loved to draw when I was younger. I loved to write stories when I was younger. And so when I was in LA and I got my first gig consulting for Hollywood, it was a video game. It was Star Wars Battlefront 2. It was the video. So I was in LA and we were in a motion capture field, and I was working with these actors and some of these people we've seen on TV, but they were actors for this video game. And that was my first taste of consulting. And I was like, wow, like I get to have an impact on this game. I can make this game as authentic as I want it to be, or I can just feed them a bunch of bullshit, like sometimes what we see, and so that got me really interested in consulting and just got me interested in the whole Hollywood business. And I love like filming. I love editing. I love taking photos, and I love all that. It's just fun. It's a hobby, really. But I wanted to turn it into a business, especially with all the consulting that I've done for Hollywood, all the movies and TV shows and commercials that I've done. I knew that I could do that. I understood the process. I knew that, we're not trying to make some big budget movie here or even some movie for Netflix, but it would be great to get into maybe a documentary here and there, or like do something on the kind of low budget level, and call that original content for ourselves. But that's one side of the house. The other side of the house is third-party clientele that just they don't have a media team and they need media services. We started with our own vertical of the firearms industry, and we kind of went to other verticals for some other companies. But that's the other side of the house. Consulting for Hollywood just gave me this really amazing picture of how this process works. From somebody taking notes down on a piece of napkin to turning into a script ending up into the shopping phase and eventually turning into a movie. And so I love it. I don't pursue that. I don't pursue consulting for Hollywood because it's very difficult. It's more difficult than trying to be an actor, because at least actors have agents and managers that work for them. As a consultant, you have nobody that works for you.
And
So
I
you're
imagine
cold
you
calling.
almost have to be there working the business. I mean, to be remote, be outside of LA.
Yeah, and that's it. You just said it. Like, you have to be in LA. If you want to be an actor, you have to be in LA. If you want to be a consultant, you have to be there. And then like that Star Wars Battlefront 2 got thrown into my lap by a buddy of mine. But then that word of mouth spread to other projects. For example, Netflix brought me on for a TV show for 2 seasons. I got some Modelo commercials. I did the movie Vice, that Dick Cheney movie with Steve Carell and Christian Bale. I did that movie. And then the latest project that I just got back from was Guy Ritchie's movie called The Interpreter with Jake Gyllenhaal. It's about a special forces team in Afghanistan, and Jake is the lead in the movie, and the team is kind of supporting him, but they all take a trip to Afghanistan, and some stuff goes really bad. But that was the latest project. I just got back from that at the end of March, early April, I forget. I got back from that. And now Guy Ritchie is doing another movie about World War II that he might bring me on for. So if the project presents itself, then I'll make time for it, because I really do enjoy the process. And by the way, Guy Ritchie is brilliant to observe. Just watching him direct and the way he works is just so amazing. But me opening a media production company was small. Like, let's just start small. Let's do some small things for other people, for ourselves, and let's just see where it goes.
Yeah, like I say, it's more of a hobby, just maybe make a few bucks off of, or just because you had an interest in.
Yeah, and I have a really strong team supporting me. There's 5 of us. There's 5 of us in this company, and we're doing really well for ourselves. And plus, we have a major project that we started a few months ago that we're probably going to launch about this time next year. And we're hoping that it's going to kind of take training and some online training and stuff like that to the next level. So hopefully we'll be launching that next year. Other than that, I consult for companies on the R&D side and the T&E side. For example, Cobalt Kinetics is the rifle manufacturer, which you guys know about. When they took on new ownership, they wanted to get into kind of like tactical rifles and combat rifles, and they brought me on board to kind of help them get moving in that direction. So consulting for Hollywood is one thing. Consulting for companies for their gear and their products is another thing.
Have you done any motivational speaks? I mean, a lot of companies will hire someone to come in and speak at conferences, talk about leadership and overcoming hard chance to do it.
Yeah, I've only spoken at one, actually. I've only spoken at one, but that was for a buddy of mine whose son graduated from basic, and he basically asked me to come speak at their ceremony. And so I had my little 10-minute speech, and I went and did that. But I haven't done it. I haven't pursued anything like that either. It really, these days, it just comes down to bandwidth.
You got a lot going on.
I feel like I'm just stretched in too many directions. But if I enjoy it, if it's a good opportunity, then I'll try to make time for it. Sure.
So you also have your podcast, the Alpha podcast. What kind of stuff? That's the reason I asked. Speaking, what kind of topics do you cover there? Where can people find?
So the 2 Alpha Collective podcast I created a while back because just like yourselves, we feel like we have something to say. And if we have a platform, then I've always been a big supporter of use your platform to do good things. Whether that is in a visual manner or it's in a verbal manner, but like use your platform to do good things, And so I built a pretty decent Instagram page for myself, and the other platforms that I'm on are doing okay too. But I really wanted to start speaking on topics that involve our community. But the reason I called it the 2 Alpha Collective podcast is because I didn't want to just pigeonhole myself to the firearms industry or tactics or guns or gear. I wanted to eventually reach out and talk to other people. I want to talk about other industries, maybe the health industry, maybe, the Board of Education, politics is something that I've been talking about a lot on my podcast recently. Talking about why gun control doesn't work and all that stuff. So we do talk about a lot of things, but right now there is a theme to the podcast, and it very much is firearms training and the Second Amendment.
Well, you said politics, so I'm going to ask you. Obviously, this has been a hot week with everything coming out of the Supreme Court across topic that could countries. What are your thoughts on this? We see, obviously, live in Buffalo. More horrible shooting. There could be one. Was in Uvalde. You have seen throughout your deployments, like Rob and I have, Kobe and stuff. What happens when it suffered because of evil? But we also know that guns are inanimate objects, good or bad. As you see this country go through what it's been through, shootings, pushing a 3-month-old and executed right on the street, pushing a stroller. What are your thoughts about? I guess just what are your thoughts? Where the country's going? The doom and gloom?
Yeah,
or do you think there's a chance to save it?
Obviously, all of those events are extremely tragic. They're horrific events, and I'm a father myself. I have 4 children. My oldest is about to start college. My youngest is about to turn 9. So I put myself in their shoes, and it doesn't take a parent to put themselves in the shoes of these people who have lost their kids or lost their loved ones in these tragic incidents. So, but what really kind of concerns me is where all the fingers are being pointed, versus looking at the root of the problem, versus trying to understand why has mass shootings increased over the decades. I remember covering in one of my recent podcasts, I said that in the 1950s, there was only one mass shooting. And back then the definition was 2 or more people, right? And so there was one mass shooting in an entire decade. And in the 60s, there were 6. And in the 70s, there was 13, and then in the 80s, it jumped up to 32. And then in the 90s, it was 42.
And the definition
changed.
The definition changed. And then.
Yeah, the definition changed, I think, I forget, maybe in the mid 80s.
Yeah, I want to say it was in the 80s, I think. Yeah.
It changed to 4 more people? Correct?
Yeah, it definitely, the bar was raised a little bit.
Yeah, and so if, but when people try to blame guns, it's like, I was listening to somebody say the other day, when he was growing up in a small town, people could order their guns out of a Sears catalog. Yeah. You didn't need a background check. You didn't even have to be 18. You could be whatever age and be like, yep, if your parents had the money, it's like, yeah, you can order that rifle out of a Sears catalog.
You can find it. You can buy rifles and shotguns. I've seen shotguns that have Sears, Roebuck and Company on. You can order a shotgun.
I grew up in a little town in Texas, and it was nothing to go out at lunchtime and go dove hunting. Yeah, nothing to go out to, see the latest weapon that somebody got for their birthday or whatever, hanging in the back window of the truck, sitting in the parking lot of the school.
Yeah,
that was normal.
Hanging on the back window of the truck, a couple of shotguns, maybe a rifle. That was very common back then, right? Yeah. It was also very common for people not to have locks on their front doors back then, right? So we have to look at these and be like, well, guns have always been around. I mean, this country was founded exactly for that purpose, like not purpose, but for that reason. It's because good people with guns were able to fight off bad people with guns, and we won, right? And so guns have always been there. And so what is the root problem of what is happening now? Is it guns? Because we all know on this side of things that it's never been guns. It's never been this tool or this instrument or this inanimate object, like you said, Troy. And so, but what really bothers me is that nobody wants to go after the root of the problem. Nobody wants to ask the question, why has mass shootings increased over the decades? What has changed in our country, in our culture? What societal issues have driven these kids or these people to go into a school and just shoot up the place, right? And if you look at the only information that we could gather from these people that have done these, for example, the Buffalo shooter, when he left that 180-page manifesto,
right?
This guy said that he is a left-wing authoritarian, right? He didn't say anything that he's a white right-wing conservative. Yeah, he was a 18, a white 18-year-old kid, but in his manifesto, he was a leftist. He hated not only black people, but he hated people like me. He hated anybody that wasn't white. He blamed Jewish people for societal ills. I mean, he blamed everybody but white people. And in fact, I don't know if you guys saw that video that he streamed on Twitch before it got taken down. When he went to that grocery store, and remember, he found that white guy in the aisle, and he drew down that guy.
Yeah, it was the only person he paused for. He apologized.
And he apologized, right? He was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't, I'm sorry."
And that guy's probably going to be messed up for the rest. Talk about a survivor's guilt.
Yeah, and so it goes back to, like, let's say ARs are already banned. Okay, well, let's look at Columbine. Those two kids went into Columbine with assault weapon ban compliant ARs and a shotgun, and they still killed all those kids.
Right. A Caltech and something else.
You can look at the Kenosha, Wisconsin Christmas parade, Nice, France parade, right? People can use vehicles, they all kind of stuff. And
Virginia Tech was pistols, but
So you can ban ARs, but is that ever going to stop criminals? Because criminals, one, when has any criminal ever abided by any law? Right. Two, if you ban one type of weapon, they're just going to grab another weapon. If it's not a firearm, they're going to run in there with a machete, a knife. They're going to run in there with anything that can cause injury or cause death, and they're going to do the same thing. Are they going to kill as many people? Maybe not. In the case of Uvalde, I mean, he may have. I mean, he was in there for an hour to hour 15 minutes, uncontested.
Fortunately, now we're learning that he definitely could have been stopped a lot earlier, right? As sickening, as sad as it is to see, it's just a reality, right?
Yeah.
Mistake.
But then, that also just supports the point that we can't depend on the government to come protect us. We can't depend on the government to come save us in a timely manner. The saying that, a 9mm is faster than 911 is true. And it makes sense. Why would I wait, 15, 20 minutes for the cops to show up when I don't have that 15 minutes in the first place? I mean, if the guy has already broken into my house, I have two options. I either beg him for mercy and tell him to leave, or ask him to leave, or I tell him, do whatever you want, because at this point I've submitted myself to you. I mean, those are my only two choices.
And look, we're seeing 2 years ago during all the riots, the police force that in Seattle, Minneapolis, and places that would not respond. And most recently, there's sheriff's departments now that are not responding because they can't afford the gas. So those are, again, testaments to, yes, you can't wait. And you have sheriffs in Florida who are saying, don't wait on us, take them out, right? You're defense.
But Washington has no real interest in solving any issues.
No,
because they use every issue, whether it's immigration, whether it's 2A, whether it's anything, can be used as a political weapon. Yeah. Whether you're in power or not, it can be used as a political weapon, and is used as a weapon. And they as long as they can continue to use it, it will be around.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, but no one's going to convince me that this government doesn't have the agenda to disarm these people. Like, you're just not going to convince me of that. That's not true. That is their agenda. They're patient about it. They're going about it in a very smart way, and they're using these events to their advantage. And there was another analogy that someone said that absolutely made sense. In the jungles and in the Sahara, you have these apex predators and you have their prey, right? You have these cheetahs and lions, and then you have the gazelle. And the only way the gazelle can defend themselves is either one, their speed, but more than their speed is they use their antlers, and that's the only defense that they have. How can you sit there and convince me that the only way to stop the cheetahs from hunting the gazelles is to cut off their antlers? You know what I mean? It just makes no sense to me. So how can we sit there and say the only way for innocent people to defend themselves is for us to implement more gun control? Because, as we know, bad guys don't follow the rules, and bad guys can get guns from the black market just as easily as I can go to an FFL store and get a gun myself with a background check. And
we look at Sandy Hook, right? We look at that. People are like, "Well, I can't believe he had access." Well, He killed his mom. That's a crime number one. Murdered her. Who knows
Yeah.
how he knew where to get the whatever, but he killed her so he could take her gun and go shoot him. So
No, Sandy Hook, that was his mom's gun. She bought
Yes.
that gun legally, passed the
Right.
background check, and then he was the one that killed her. So
right,
you know,
right. That's what I mean. So they'll do whatever they want.
Yeah.
But you mentioned they don't find the root cause. If they cared about the root cause, the president would be flying to Chicago every Monday, like he flew to
Yeah.
Buffalo, right? Like he flew to Uvalde, and he would be there because of the 30 to 40 shot every weekend and multiple killed,
Exactly.
right? But they don't, because the question is, you said, how come these numbers have went up so much over the years? It's a number of reasons, but the bottom line is it's a lack of morals, values, beliefs that have just totally vaporized from the country. Whether it's a lack of faith, whether it's a lack of dual parents, doesn't the bottom line is people don't think there either is there's no outcome or no for doing a bad thing. They have no fear of it, or it's glorified, and they don't see it as. I mean, what keeps sane people from insane people, from mass murderers, is we have a conscience. I tell people all the time, the conscience is what defines us from everyone just being mass murderers, because it's against our DNA to take another human life. It
Yeah.
bothers us. It doesn't bother.
You can't legislate morals.
Right.
Yeah.
If they cared, that's
You
what they'd be going after. Whether it's mental health, they'd be going after things like that instead of, say, going after the tool, right? Because if you did, we'd have prohibition, because alcohol kills more people than anybody. And if they really cared about the tool being the problem, then alcohol would be banned again, right? And not legalizing every drug.
Yeah, and they're just completely ignoring the fact that most of the gun violence in this country happens through criminal hands, not law-abiding hands.
Right.
Not law-abiding citizens. 99.99% of law-abiding citizens mind their own business. They buy their guns legally. They use them for the purposes of whether they want to hunt with it, or they want to compete with it, or whether they want to train with it. But they don't acknowledge that, and nobody's asking the question of why are these shootings happening. It's clearly guns are just a tool, but the people behind it. Why are we not doing research into the people behind it? Why is it that out of all these school shootings, every time when the official reports come out, they say that this shooter was known to the FBI? Well, if they were known to the FBI, one, how were they known to the FBI? And two, why are the FBI not intervened sooner?
It's almost every shooting we wait for the red flag to find out that never worked.
Yeah. So in all this legislation that they're trying to pass, none of it will ever prevent shootings, or none of it will have ever had prevented the shootings in the past. It's just none of it makes sense, from red flag laws to bumping the bumping the age of purchase to 21. None of that stuff makes sense. Red flag laws absolutely do nothing to solve criminal issues, do nothing to address gun violence. Gary Willis was that 61-year-old from Maryland, where the cops were pounding on his door like at 5 o'clock in the morning, and he woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning to pounding on his door. So of course he grabbed his gun, just like I would. If anybody was pounding on my door before the sun comes up, I'm approaching the door with a gun in hand. That's just what I'm going to do. But when he saw that it was the cops, they opened the door, and the cops said, "Hey, we're here on a confiscation order from the court, from the judge, to confiscate your guns." Well, one, he's half awake, and two, he doesn't understand what's going on. But supposedly he got into a fight with his family, and one of his family members called it into the cops, and the cops, ran it through the judge, and they got that confiscation order. And so that man was shot on his porch that morning and killed by the cops. Right now, who's in the wrong and who's in the right? Like, these red flag laws that they're proposing, and now they're trying to incentivize states.
Yeah.
They're trying to dangle money in front of states, like, hey, if you guys incorporate a red flag law, statewide red flag law, we'll give you a bunch of resources, right? Which we know that just means money, but it doesn't do anything. They killed an innocent man on his porch at 5 o'clock in the morning because one of his family members painted him out to be a danger to himself or others, when this guy was just minding his own business. And I'm sorry, but any of us will react that way. If the cops show up at our house in force, pounding on our door, of course we're going to be upset. Of course we're going to be like, what do you guys want? What are you doing here? What red flag law? What confiscation order?
Right.
But as a result, this innocent person dies.
Alec Baldwin has killed more people than any of my weapons.
True. True.
But again, it doesn't even take. I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago in Austin where the guy flew his private plane into the Austin IRS building. It doesn't. Yeah, that happened. That was probably, I don't know, 12 years ago. It was right there on 183. He flew out of Georgetown, picked the IRS building, flew right into it.
Yeah, so
was upset with his taxes.
And this latest gun control package that was passed, they really kind of added all these mental health things in there, right? And I don't know if you guys read that little 9-part.
Oh yeah, with the dating, the boyfriend girlfriend thing.
Yeah, they're trying to close that boyfriend loophole, which I didn't even know that was a thing up until a couple weeks ago. But first of all, that's already addressed on the 4473 background check form. It talks about harassing. It talks about if you have a restraining order. It talks about domestic violence and domestic abuse. But what they're trying to do is they are trying to pave the way to now change that 4473 to make more people prohibitive, but also so that worst case scenario, they could almost make it retroactive. Where like now, if you had a restraining order against you when you were in college from your girlfriend, now that's going to restrict you from buying firearms now at 20 years later, And so they're just, they're so sneaky with all these little legislation that they're trying to pass, and then we have these Republicans, these rhinos that just go along with it. And, they're rhinos.
Talk to me about background checks when Hunter Biden is arrested.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He got around it. He got around it.
Yeah, he got around it. Yeah. He got around a lot though.
That's true. Yeah. He did. Well, hey, we've covered quite a bit. Where this is where our show goes. Before you look up, it's like you don't want to keep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's
time flies.
It does. It does. I want to give you a chance. We've been covering a lot of stuff. Is there anything we did not talk about that you'd like our viewers and listeners to know about? It could be a cause or something that's near and dear to your heart. Something about one of your organizations. Anything like that. I just want to give you a chance to.
Oh gosh, I work very closely with the Green Beret Foundation. There's a lot of foundations that do a lot for military vets and their families. They kind of, some of them have a little more specialty, like for disabled vets and stuff like that. But what I really love about the Green Beret Foundation is that it is called the Green Beret Foundation, but they don't kind of put restrictions on who they help with the money that gets donated to their organization and the charity and the fundraising that they do. They help. They are helping people. Obviously, they're helping special forces families, like when their husbands are gone and there's a house repair that needs to be made or something that comes up emergency-wise, medical reasons. They help out with all that, but they help out in a lot of different ways that people don't realize because they kind of pick the name, the Green Beret Foundation. People think they're strictly helping SF when they're not. They're helping a lot of military veterans, SF or not. And I've worked very closely with those guys. So if you guys can, please go check them out on their website. If even the smallest donation helps. I do fundraisers for those guys once a year, and I typically raise anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 in like a little 2-month fundraiser that I do. But all the donations help guys, and I know there's a million charities out there, but this is just one charity that kind of near and dear to my heart.
So Travis Wilson,
minimum,
Travis.
At the minimum, give him a follow.
Yeah, Travis is right up the road from me. Travis Wilson's a good friend of the show. He's one of the main guys at Green Beret. In fact, he's one of our guest hosts sometimes. Would have been on tonight, but he's right up next to you. He's in Georgetown. He ain't far from you.
Yeah, that's great.
No, he's
in
not Georgetown. He's just north of Houston.
Oh,
just north of Houston.
Travis is.
Yeah. Yes.
I thought he was.
Yeah, he didn't move to Georgetown.
Oh, okay.
Livingston.
Yeah, Green Beret Foundation is in San Antonio, by the way. They're headquartered out of San Antonio. I've been to give those guys a visit. Yeah.
Awesome.
But that's Thank you. Thank you for letting me plug them.
Yeah, they are definitely near and dear to our heart too, and yeah, Rob, I know we covered a lot of things. I know you didn't get time.
No, that's good.
know you're watching this chat and the socials. Anything else for tonight?
No, so you've got 2 Alpha Training Group, you've got your media group, you've got Instagram, you've got the Musa store. What else is next? What are you gonna tackle next?
Well, so
because you don't have enough going on.
Yeah, and the podcast. I like to put a lot on my plate and then complain about it. No, so I'm taking the summer off from teaching. If you go onto the 2 Alpha Training Group's website, you're not going to see one single class. I mean, the only classes we post on there anyway are open enrollment classes. We have our law enforcement contracts and all that, but we're taking the summer off from teaching open enrollment because I'm trying to get, Rob, you asked me what's next. The next thing that I'm working on is a huge, I can't tell you guys much about it because it's so early, but what we're trying to launch next year around this time or even a little bit sooner is kind of a one-stop shop platform where people can go and train, learn. They can they can interact with each other. Obviously, we'll have a shop little corner in there where people can buy merchandise and stuff like that. But we're really going to take training to a whole new level. It is a massive project, and that's why I've kind of taken this summer off to kind of get it off the ground and going. And we're going. We're going. It is very front loaded, but it's we're knocking it out one little chunk at a time. And so that is the biggest thing that I'm working on. Otherwise, it's really either teaching classes around the country or maybe Guy Ritchie will call me in for another movie. Who knows?
There you go. There you go. Hey, thanks so much for being on. Rob's putting up all your links and everything in the chat. You gave us a lot of time tonight. We really appreciate it, Kyle. I hope people check you out. Check out the site. Tune into your podcast, 2 Alpha Collective. So people search for that in your favorite podcast service, playing with it. And
it is on all the major, it's on the major ones, the Googles, the Google Play, the Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It's everywhere.
Yeah. Awesome. So you definitely check that out. And stay in contact, man. Come out with these new initiatives and you got these big things coming about. We'd definitely want to have you back on because, I mean,
absolutely.
I think it was a great chat and give you some publicity. Who knows, God forbid, what's going to happen in this country between now and things to talk about. Especially as we get close to midterms. They want to get more.
Yeah. People tell me like, you should run for office. I was like, man,
you don't know my past.
You're trying to ruin my life.
Yeah.
No, well, we'll see. It is interesting times. It's kind of cool that we live in these times. I mean, it is crazy from the 80s to the 90s, and now we're like in the 2020s, and we're just like with this. It feels like everything is upside down.
Yeah.
But I will say that there's always hope. Like there's always people fighting the good fight, whether it's on your tiny little platform like mine, or whether it's on a huge platform somewhere on a national level. People are fighting the good fight. So regardless of all the craziness that's happening in this country, guys, everything will be just fine. I promise you. All right. Just keep doing what you're doing and keep voicing your concerns and we'll be just fine.
Your targets are awesome, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I really like using, I've used those quite a bit.
Yeah. Thank you. I'll be uploading some more. Yeah. I've been kind of slacking on those lately.
Hey, you ended it perfect. Those are some great final words. We appreciate it again, Kawa. Everyone else, thank you for tuning in. Bring us in your ears and on your screens. Tune in with us 8 o'clock Eastern here, doing the Nunn, working on another fun. Bob doesn't even know about it. So, other than that, thank you again so much. Hang on there, Kawa. We'll chat with you for minutes after. Everyone, thank you so much. And go over and have a safe, happy July 4th. Celebrate this great country's independence. We didn't even get it.
I know, we didn't. But happy 4th of July, everybody. Stay safe, do lots of fireworks, and be careful.
Yep, that's it. There you go. There's your safety brief right there. We'll let everyone go. Everyone have a good night.
Take care.
Just doing the Nunn Show, and we hope you had as much fun listening to it as we did hosting it for you. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. You can find all these links at stewandthenunn.com. We will talk to you again next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. Also, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Commodity Outdoors, Veteran Outdoors, Enlisted 9 Fight Company, Warrior Media Solutions, and BooHammer.com. Thank you again, and have a good night.